So if we think about mosques in Britain, there probably are about 1,500 mosques, with about 200 of them being purpose-built. This actually means that there are about twice as many mosques per Muslim as there are in your average European country. So there are a large number of mosques available to those who want to worship in those spaces in Britain. Some have called mosques the new cathedrals of the English landscape, ways in which the English landscape is evolving and ways in which the heritage, the multi-religious heritage of this country continues to move on and potentially accommodate different groups and have spires and minarets rise up together along the landscape of Britain. In recent years, in many parts of Europe and around the world, in fact, mosques have been very controversial. And they're very controversial in large part because they make symbolic claims over public space. So putting a mosque in the center of a city or town can be an attempt to say that there's something Islamic about this part of town, or that we should also be enfranchised as citizens of this particular space. And that can be something which can anger other people and can lead to contention. And there are many reasons for contention over mosques, but sometimes that has to do with what they symbolize and people's sense of national identity, and if Muslims can really be fully incorporated into that sense of identity. Now I want to bring us to the main concern of my talk, which is about the Mega-Mosque, or supposed Mega-Mosque in Newham. And the ideas for this came from a group called Tablighi Jamaat. This is a group which is from the 20th century, and it's a revivalist movement which is focused on a set of 6 rules that you can follow to become a more pious Muslim. And what this group is most known for is propagating these rules and going to other Muslims as an intra-Muslim missionary movement. So they're very engaged with going on mission tours to convert other Muslims into their movement, essentially. This has generally been considered an apolitical and nonviolent movement, so it hasn't really caused a lot of negative headlines because it's been relatively unknown, actually, to Western press. And it should also be said that we shouldn't just characterize Tablighi Jamaat in one way, because it is a global movement with many followers who might do different things. It's quite easy to see the relatively conservative forms of dress and action in one way, but it's an adaptable group. So that's Tablighi Jamaat. That's the protagonist of trying to develop this mosque. Their charitable foundation bought the Abbey Mill site in Newham in 1996 for £1.6 million. This is a very large site, an 18-acre site, which was at a former chemical works. The charitable foundation, the leader of that foundation, was told that it would be wise to get a planner and the best architect you can and build the biggest mosque you can. So they were, from the very beginning, back in the mid-1990s, ambitious about what this site could be and how it could be a major center for Tablighi Jamaat activities. Mosques are usually accommodated in Britain, and most of the time mosques are celebrated as elements of multicultural heritage, or can be seen as something which shows off the city for the ways in which it brings cultures together. Something that really changed quickly for the mosque was a period of time after the successful London Olympic bid. So on the 6th of July 2005, it was announced that London was chosen as the city for hosting the 2012 Olympics. The very next day, 4 bombs exploded on London transport and really put the city into a shutdown. And the images of the bus that was exploded became a real iconic image of terrorism, and homegrown terrorism, in fact. The timing of these 2 events was very, very unfortunate. At the same time, Tablighi Jamaat recognized that with the London Olympics bid, they had a real opportunity to increase and amplify the renown of their movement. And so they released some plans for their mosque, some ideas for the mosque, in November of 2005, and really hoped to basically make this a beacon, and it would be an opportunity for the movement to get better known and to generate more followers, and that could continue to grow after the Olympics as well. But the fact of the matter is that the London Olympics was a kind of mega event which altered the scale of the site, or altered the way in which the site was viewed by all parties, not only Tablighi Jamaat. And this would end up being something that was the death knell of the mosque plans. Events and projects that are at a mega scale tend to be at risk of media overstatement, political manipulation and public hysteria. So when you have something of this kind of grand scale, everybody's interested in it, and sensationalism in journalism is very possible. The mosque plans were quite intriguing. The leaders of the Tablighi Jamaat commissioned Manjar Ivars as their architects, and you can see some images of the work that they did here. Quite a sinuous design, very contemporary look to it. What really raised eyebrows, of course, was that this was planned to be for 40,000 people, with a capacity able to be enlarged to 70,000 for major Islamic holidays. So they were planning for the future so that this could eventually be a really massive and important mosque of global recognition. This was designed as a green mosque. It was designed to have wind turbine minarets. It had, as part of the design, Islamic gardens, which were designed around Isfahan, beautiful Islamic gardens, and other features which made it probably the most green-compliant mosque designed for the UK. The thing that really got journalists writing about this was the size. And so the controversy got going with one article which would become something of a model for what future journalists would write about. Giant mosque for 40,000 may be built at London Olympics. They wrote about it as a 3-story mosque which would create a Muslim quarter, only 10,000 fewer than the Olympic Stadium, and they compared it to the Liverpool Cathedral, which has the largest capacity of any Anglican institution in the UK at 3,000 people. A really key moment in this controversy was some of the work done by Alan Craig. Alan Craig had been a Newham councillor. He was the leader of the Christian People's Alliance. But the thing that was most catchy about what he did was the branding of the Mega-Mosque in particular. The words Mega-Mosque that he used were in some ways a work of genius. This was something which caught into people's fears and concerns and gave that sense of this large project. He compared the mosque to the Battersea Power Station in terms of scale. And then a final article that I can show is from the Telegraph about shadow cast by a Mega-Mosque. It is intended to be a significant Islamic landmark whose prominence and stature will be enhanced by its proximity to the Olympic site. When television viewers around the world see aerial views of the stadium during the opening ceremony, the most prominent religious building in the camera shot will not be one of the city's iconic churches such as St. Paul's, but the Mega-Mosque. Its arrival in London will be a significant coup for Islam. So you get a sense of the symbolic importance that's being attached to the mosque. There was a petition launched which had these words, very telling words. We, the undersigned, petition the Prime Minister to abolish plans to build a £100 million mega-mosque. We, the Christian population of this great country, England, would like the proposed plan to build a mega-mosque in East London scrapped. This will only cause terrible violence and suffering, and more money should go to the NHS. Bit of a non sequitur at the end there. So what this is saying, this is implying many things at the same time. One of them is that the government is funding this, which is completely untrue. The money for this had nothing to do with the government. Obviously, this is also trying to be a voice for the Christian population of this country, trying to say that we should rise up against those of Islam who are trying to build this project. It's trying to say that money's being essentially stolen from the NHS in exchange for putting this mosque project forward. And it's also implying something with terrible violence and suffering. It's trying to give you images of terrorism and violence. Links to this author to the BNP later emerged to the British National Party, so it's a person involved in the far right. But this petition became the most signed petition on that website at the time, with 281,000 signatures at that time. This led Tablighi Jamaat finally to regroup. They hired a public relations firm. They changed their architects. They put together their own website. They started to brand themselves as the Abbey Mills Mosque, so a much more positive, quaint kind of branding. But as you can see, the architecture is much simpler in many respects, not meant to be threatening in any way, relatively British design, just 10,000 people. So they tried what they could to downscale the mosque. There were quite a few news articles from prominent individuals from across the spectrum of views who were opposed to the mosque. There was a public inquiry when many different individuals spoke against the mosque. Eventually, the Newham Council rejected the proposal on the grounds that it was too big, would lead to too much traffic, and that the site was heavily contaminated. And then finally, the central government got involved and rejected all appeals. So this is a shut case now, that there will not be a Mega-Mosque or an Abbey Mills Mosque in Newham. So there are ways in which scaling up a controversy can make it more politically costly and more difficult to support a construction project or something like that. And that is a very common tactic. We still have that open question of, will mosques one day be fully accepted as new cathedrals of the English landscape? Will there be ways in which they can be fully enfranchised and make their mark on the English landscape? That will depend on innovative architects and ways in which mosques are rethought to fit particular urban contexts and other contexts.